Alrighty, welcome everyone. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Please have your cell phones off or on silent so we can all focus and show our respect to today's speakers. Upstairs areas are off limits, so please remain in the main lecture hall in event space. Bathrooms are to the right of the stage, and we ask teachers to give permission to students in your group one at a time. Respectful behavior is expected at all times. That means listening attentively, clapping appropriately, and avoiding side conversations. During the Q&A, if you're chosen to ask a question, please stand, introduce your name and your school, speak clearly, and keep your questions concise. This helps us hear from as many of you as possible. So, to get started, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the 2025 T.D. Walter Bean High School lecture here at the University of Waterloo. My name is Amanda St. Marie, and I'm the Environment Indigenous Initiatives Manager here at the Faculty of Environment at the University of Waterloo. Now, it's usually rare for a First Nations person to deliver a territorial acknowledgement, but as someone born and raised in this region, but not of this region, I want to begin by honoring the two host nations whose land we are on. That includes the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, land granted to the Six Nations, extending 6 miles or 10 kilometers on either side of the Grand River. We also acknowledge the Between the Lakes Treaty No. 3 of 1792, which was signed by the Mississaugas. We also honor the two-row wampum, which emphasizes mutual respect and coexistence. Now, when I was asked to introduce today's speaker, I thought back to my own high school days, which was many, many moons ago, when events like this offered a welcome break from routine, the day-to-day programming. They were a chance to hear from someone bold, courageous, and inspiring, someone who had faced challenges, asked big questions, overcame the odds, and helped change the world. Today is no different, but what makes today unique is that the story we're exploring isn't finished. If we think of climate change as a story, with a setup, a rising action, a climax, and resolution, I'd argue that Canada is at the climax, the moment when the stakes are highest, and the choices we make now will shape everything that comes next. So what does come next? Well, that depends on many things, actors and factors, but it also depends on you. In just a moment, you'll hear from someone who's spent his life tackling the world's biggest environmental challenges, a global leader in climate and sustainability, a brilliant, charismatic, and deeply engaging speaker, Sir Andrew Steer, our 2025 T.D. Walter Bean Professor in Environment. But first, a bit about the T.D. Walter Bean Professorship in Environment. It was established in 1992 to honor the legacy of Walter Bean, a visionary leader and former president of Waterloo Trust. Since 1994, this professorship has championed hands-on learning and youth engagement around environmental issues. Now hosted by the Faculty of Environment and supported by TD Canada Trust, it continues to raise awareness of global sustainability through public lectures that highlight the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, bringing together students like you to imagine and build a better future. Now, to Sir Andrew. Sir Andrew has spent his career at the highest levels of international development and environmental policy. He's advised world leaders, led major institutions like the Bezos Earth Fund and the World Resources Institute, and helped shape global climate action. He's held senior roles at the World Bank, influenced policy in the UK government, and currently teaches at both the London School of Economics and Georgetown University. In 2024, he was knighted for his extraordinary contributions to sustainable development and named by Forbes as one of the world's 50 most impactful climate leaders. But what makes his work so powerful isn't just the scale, it's the vision. He believes solving massive problems like climate change starts with bold ideas and real action, a rolling up of our sleeves and a shoulder against the wheel type of mentality. and that's where you come in. See, today is not just about listening. It's about imagining your role and finding your place in this movement. Whether you're passionate about science, art, policy, engineering, business, geography, the environment, or activism, there's a place for you in the future we are building. Because climate change isn't just a challenge, it's an invitation to be bold, to be creative, to be courageous, to imagine a better world and then build it together. So as we begin today's lecture, I encourage you to listen, not just with curiosity, but with purpose. Because the story of climate change is still being written, and your chapter starts now. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our 2025 T.D. Walter Bean Professor in Environment, Sir Andrew Steer.
Well, thank you, Amanda. I think you should be giving the speech. It was inspiring, and look, for me today, it is an incredible treat meeting all of you. Everything that Amanda said is absolutely true. I'm going to be talking about some of the problems we face, some of the achievements we've had, but mainly the unfinished business, and that's obviously where we all come in. It was fun for me to give a lecture 2 nights ago to the adults. It's a lot more fun to talk to you. So how's it going? As we look at the world, look at nature, look at climate, how's it going? And the answer is actually not so well. This is a chart, I don't know whether you've seen anything like this before, but it goes all the way back 300,000 years, which is when humans started becoming sort of human. And you'll notice on the left-hand side, you see it goes up and down. This is temperature. So the up parts that seem a little yellow, that's when we had like tropical forests here in Canada. The blue parts are the ice ages. And then if you go to the right, you see that long period there of blue. That's a very, very long ice age. Not much fun being a human in those days. No summer vacations. But then we came into what is sometimes called the Goldilocks zone. It's called the Holocene era. And we're just now leaving that era. And why is it called Goldilocks? Because it was just right. Wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. And that enabled us for 10,000 years to start becoming more modern humans. That's when we invented agriculture, for example. And the history really began then. And now if you look towards the far right, you'll see that actually we're now leaving that period. So we're leaving that Goldilocks zone, and we're heading up towards what we thought was about 2.8 degrees Celsius, but now more modern thinking, just recent research suggests we may be over 3 degrees Celsius under current trends. If you look at that level and you go all the way back to the left, you'll see that in the last 300,000 years, we've never had anything like this before. In fact, the last time we had the atmosphere we have today with 415 parts per million of carbon dioxide was 3 million years ago. And 3 million years ago, because of that, we had 3 degrees Celsius higher, and the sea level was 20 meters higher. Not good at all. So that's sort of the situation, and it's worth asking, why is this happening now? Why is this dramatic change which seems so bad? And the answer is, obviously, the human footprint has grown so rapidly. And if you look, this takes you back to the year 0. This is population. And basically from the year 0, in fact, you could go all the way back 300,000 years, there was almost no population growth at all. It took us until, it took us 300,000 years to reach the first 1 billion people. And then in 200 years, we went from 1 billion to 8.5 billion. An astonishing boom in population. And there's a very similar chart you could show. This is not population. This is actually economic activity. This is the real gross domestic product of the world. And you can see, basically, for ever since the year zero, there really was very little economic growth. We were in a low-level equilibrium. And then suddenly, as you know, at the time of the Industrial Revolution, we suddenly had this massive increase in activity. And it took us to about 1800 before we had the first $1 trillion of an economy, and we're now over $100 trillion. So that sort of gives you the impression of why suddenly there's this sort of huge human economic and population footprint. Now, it's not all bad, by the way. Some people sort of tend to say, oh, it's a disaster out there. But actually, as a result of all of that growth, we've had incredible progress. This is the rate of world poverty. Back, you see, in 1825, more than 80% of the world's population, which would include most of us here, were in abject poverty. Abject poverty. Now it's less than 9%. Incredible progress we've seen. Just in the last 50 years, we've seen more reduction in world poverty than in any 50 years in the history of the world. And that's an amazing gift from God. And so as we talk about the bad things about the environment, which we must, don't forget that there's been huge progress. And it's not only poverty reduction, it's in life expectancy. Look at that. By the year 1900, people lived to just 40 years on average. We now live to, on average, worldwide, 74 years. And of course, in a place like Canada, we live to older than that. So we're seeing this sort of growth in income, growth in longevity, and a growth in what we call the middle class. The middle class is sort of when you're rich enough to buy things like a refrigerator, a television, maybe a motorbike, perhaps in time a car, you start accumulating a lot of stuff. Back in 1990, there were 1 billion people in the world that were part of the middle class, and most of us here would have been part of that 1 billion. Went up to 2 billion in 2010, and it's going to be 5 billion by 2030. This is good news, but it means more people buying more stuff, throwing more stuff away, more energy needed, etc. So you get the point. And if you want a sort of a pictorial image of the pace of human activity, think of it as a great big tsunami. And in the last century, we had, that was like the 20th century, remember? 20 times more extraction, manufacturing, consumption, and waste. 20 times. And that's because the world economy was growing about 3% a year. It's still growing at 3% a year. And if it keeps growing at 3% a year, it'll be another 20 times. So for 200 years, that's 20 times 20. So it would go up 400 times. So the human footprint, which wasn't having a huge impact on nature and climate change and everything else, suddenly is 400 times bigger. No wonder we've got a problem. So we have this sort of paradoxes in a way. This is us extracting stuff out of nature, and that's made us rich. And it's enabled us to live longer, and it's reduced poverty, and it's threatening our entire future. So how do we enjoy that progress without the damage? Well, at the moment, there's lots of damage. We're throwing stuff away. We live in what we call a take, make, waste world. 11 million tons of waste. Today, whilst we're talking, every single minute, we're losing 20 soccer fields worth of tropical forests. That's a lot. Just think about it. Every minute, another, you know how big a soccer field is, multiplied by 20. That's a lot. That's terrible. Today, there are 2 billion people at risk of a water shortage. That will go probably to 5 billion by 2050. Today, the storms are not necessarily more frequent, but they are certainly stronger. And we're seeing that on the news. Canada knows a great deal about fires. In 2023, you had an astonishing array of fires. And this year also, you've had a lot of fires. Fires in Canada affected 117 million people in terms of the quality of the air, because it wasn't only Canadians, it was also Americans. So the ocean is not only being overheated, it's being acidified as it absorbs 25% of all the carbon dioxide that's been emitted, and it absorbs 90% of all the heat that comes from global warming. Also over-polluted, overfished, and of course it's not only climate change, it's nature that is threatened. 1 million species are currently threatened, and economists have done an analysis of the world economy is now $100 trillion. Nearly half of that is very dependent upon nature. So we actually have an economic threat here. That's not necessarily why we should address nature. We should address nature because it's morally the right thing to do. It's worth remembering that there are 65,000 species of vertebrates. Vertebrate is, as you know, a creature that has a backbone. One of those species out of 65,000 has doubled in population over the last 50 years. If you take all the rest together, scientists estimate that their total population has declined by 60%. One species doubles, guess who that is? That's humans. All the others combined decline by 60%. That sort of indicates sort of how serious things are. And socially as well, the impact is terrible. More climate refugees we're seeing, and it's always the poorest that get hit the worst. We feel we get hit the worst, but actually poor people, especially in developing countries, get hit the worst, especially, for example, for the shortage of water. Now the question is, how do you react to this? All of this news, which you've heard before, of course. Do you react like this, shocked? Who reacts like this? Who reacts like this? Wait a minute, I'm scared of this. This is terrifying. I'm having nightmares. Yeah, I do. Who looks at this and says, my goodness me, this is difficult, but I am actually going to be part of solving it? Who feels like that? Well, good, thank you. Yeah, so we should feel all of those three. Shocked, scared, I'm going to get in the race. Now, this is one you probably shouldn't feel like. This is like, hey, I'm okay with it. I don't mind. Well, maybe that's good too. At times, be relaxed. Not my business kind of thing. So what I would like us to talk about is how we're going to engage in this. But just a little bit of history. This is 2025. 10 years ago, 2015, we had this. You've seen this before, the Paris Climate Deal. All the nations of the world, 194 nations, agreed for the first time in history a common approach to climate change. We were very excited, as you can tell there, very excited. And also that year, 10 years ago, we did this. First time in the history of the world, all the countries agreed on common objectives for every country. And we really felt then maybe we human beings can get our act together. Maybe we can coordinate well. Well, 10 years on, it's not going as well as we thought. And it's worth remembering, just as Amanda was saying, it's sort of it's a race against time now. The way, I don't know how much you know about the Paris climate deal, but it's a very unusual deal. It doesn't say you do this, and if you don't do it, we'll penalize you or we'll put you in prison. What it does is it says, look, all the countries in the world, you make a voluntary offer. You decide what you could do. And so they all came up with their national plans. They're called NDCs, Nationally Determined Contributions. And we all knew, I was very heavily involved in that. We all knew that those first round were not going to be enough, because why should I work hard to solve the problem if he's not, sort of thing. So the idea was that every 5 years you'd have to raise your level of ambition. So it's already happened once. This is the year where you have to raise your level of ambition, because it's 10 years on from that. And it's really important. Now, last week was an important week. The General Assembly of the United Nations, I was there. Some of people in this room may also have been there. And this is when countries were sort of making their offer, if you like. And so far, about 90 have done it. Well, first of all, they were supposed to make their offer, their new NDC, last February 2025. Almost nobody did, except Canada. Well done, Canada. You were just about the first out of the block of a serious big country to do it. And you said, we're in. We're going to lower our greenhouse gas emissions by 45 to 50% by 2035 over 2005. So take 2005 as the base, and then let's do this. This was a good commitment. Not enough, not enough. But 5 years from now, your job will be to raise the level of ambition. And 5 years after that. And the idea is that each 5 years, we will have learned more about how technology makes it possible. The cost of technology will fall. The problem will become more evident. Citizens will demand more action. But the problem is, at the moment, of course, there are a lot of political headwinds, particularly here, where the United States has decided that it doesn't want to be part of this thing at all. And last week, as you may have heard, President Trump said he thinks climate change is a hoax. So 193 countries are committed. United States is not the only country. There's actually also Libya, Iran, Yemen, and America. Those are the 4 countries that say they don't want to be part of it. And obviously, America is a very important thing. A lot depends on Europe at the moment. Europe has not yet announced, the European Union has not yet announced its NDC. But the biggest question of all is about China. And the question is, will China step up and say, hey, wait a minute, we need to help the world solve the problem? China is by far the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, even though per person, China emits less than many of us do in the West, per person, because it's a very big country. And President Xi Jinping, so far, he's saying exactly the right thing. He says, look, we need to stick with this, we need to be more ambitious. And China is actually doing much more than any other country to invest in new green technologies. Last year, $2 trillion were invested in green energy, renewable energy, compared to $1 trillion in fossil fuels. So we're already making good progress. China accounted for about 1/3 of all of the green energy. Unfortunately, China's also still investing in coal. So don't get me wrong, China's an important hope. We need it to act right, but it's not doing everything right yet. So this is the real key political question for those of you interested in global politics. So how are we doing overall? Well, you can call it a success or a failure. Before Paris, we were heading towards 3 degrees Celsius increase in warming. That would have been disastrous, as I showed in the very first chart. We're now heading towards a 5 degree Celsius world. We're now heading towards a 3 degrees Celsius world. That's progress, but 3 degrees would still be an absolute disaster, as I showed in that first slide. About 100 countries out of 194 have now stepped up and said, this is our new goal. It's not enough, but at least it's a movement in the right direction. About 9,000 major companies in the world, many of the biggest companies in Canada, have committed to what we call science-based targets. And many of them are committed to go to net zero by 2050. Now, so moving forward, what needs to happen? You've heard this before. We need a radical change in energy, because energy accounts for 70% of the greenhouse gases. Cities account for most of the use of energy. We need to think about how we design our cities for transportation, for buildings. That's a huge issue. We need a new approach to food and agriculture. Food and agriculture account for nearly 30% of the problem, but also they account for almost all of the loss of nature and the loss of biodiversity, because they're expanding into natural habitats. Then we need to think about sort of creating a circular economy. In other words, instead of this sort of what I call the take, make, waste, you rather have less extraction and more reusing. And finally, we all need to think about a different approach to consumption. Doesn't mean we need to become poorer, just means we need to consume differently to what we do today. I'm not going to go through each of those because we'd be here all day, although I'd be very happy to discuss it. But here's my question for you. If we did all that, will it hurt our economy or will it help our economy? Will we have more jobs or less jobs? Will we have higher prices or lower prices? Who thinks it's bad for the economy to do these things? Wow, you guys. Who thinks it's good for the economy? Wow, you guys are so enlightened. Well, it's not always good for the economy. Sometimes it can hurt in the short term. But in the old days, 20 years ago, when you were being born, or well, not yet, but just before you were born, people rightly said there's a trade-off. And the reason for that is that actually it was quite expensive to do renewable energy. Electric vehicles back then would have been incredibly expensive, and all kinds of technologies that are cheap today were actually expensive. But now there is a new economics. And so you'll hear politicians all the time say, don't do this on climate change, or don't protect nature. It will lose jobs, it's going to cost more, inflation will go up, we'll lose competitiveness, and so on. Mainly they're wrong, mainly. Now, there are cases that not everybody's a winner, by the way. The society as a whole is a winner, the economy as a whole is a winner, but there will be those who lose, and we need to think about those people. But in general, smart, bold action on climate change and on nature will lead to more economic efficiency. It will create new technologies, it will lower risk, and it will create a new expectation about a future that is more green, that's healthier, that's more fair, and so on. And that will affect business people who have to make decisions and so on. But let me just give not going to go into the, so will it hurt our economy? I'm not going to go into those 5 things, but let me just give you a couple of examples. Take cities, for example. And by the way, it's wonderful what is going on here in the University of Waterloo on cities. And you guys in Canada are thinking a lot about this. We've now become an urbanized world. Back in 1800, only 3% of the world's population were in cities. And then it grew and grew. And you see, we reached halfway just after the turn of the century. And it's going to be 75%. So in every region of the world except Africa, rural populations are shrinking and people are moving to cities. And this is where the battle will be won or lost with regard to energy. And, oh, sorry, missed that one. 75% in 2050. For the last 120 odd years, we've been building cities for automobiles rather than for people, which is a strange thing to do. And as a result, in the United States, for example, the economy loses more than $1 trillion a year just people sitting in traffic. It's hard to believe, isn't it? This in Houston, Texas, the average spend on transportation just to get around is 14%. Whilst if you go to Copenhagen, it's only 4%. And cities that were designed before the automobile generally are sort of nicer than cities that were built after the Copenhagen. You cycle around it, people live close to each other. The mayor of Paris has introduced something called a 15-minute city. In other words, everybody should live within 15 minutes. Everyone should be able to go to the store within 15 minutes walk, go to work within 15 minutes walk, go to their entertainment, go to their recreation, go to their park, all within a 15-minute walk. Different way of thinking, and that's what we need to be doing. Let me give you one other example. Food. Food is a real sort of wicked problem. We all enjoy our food and we're well fed. Not everyone in the world is, by any means, but we are. Here's the problem. By 2050, because people are getting richer and population is growing, we're going to need 60% more human consumption of food. At the same time, food and agriculture account for nearly 30% of greenhouse gases. So we've got to lower greenhouse gases by 70%, increase the production by 60%. But it's even worse than that. Because of climate change, agricultural yields are falling. The pink and red parts show the yield, that's how much you get per hectare, is declining by between 20 and 50% under current trends. So it's much more difficult. How do we feed 10.5 billion, especially in places like Africa, when, for example, there's less land to use, there's less reliable water for irrigation and so on. So we've got to sort of think out of the box. Now, one thing we can do is we're currently wasting 30% of all the food we produce. So 30% of the food we produce is like just throwing it away. Sometimes it's lost because it goes rotten on the way to market. Sometimes we just don't eat what's on our plate and we throw it away. If we could lower that, it would make a huge difference. Another thing we should think about, some of you may be beef farmers here. Well, I love you, I love beef, but we can't keep eating as much of it. And the reason for that is just the arithmetic. At the moment, developing countries are getting a taste for beef, and you can't blame them. As a result, beef is rising in consumption. But beef accounts for, and livestock accounts for 80% of all the agricultural land. And the problem is, if you keep growing it, there is no more agricultural land unless you cut down the forest, and we're going to lose it. And so, for example, it turns out that if you eat the same amount of nutrition from plant-based, identical nutrition from plant-based as beef, you'll use only 1/20 of the land, you'll use only 1/20 of the water, and you'll emit only 1/20 of the greenhouse gases. So there's nothing wrong with beef. I like beef, but we just should eat less of it. We should gradually move towards alternative proteins. Okay, so that's enough of what we should be doing, but let's just talk about us. What could we be doing? Well, first of all, what to do? First of all, let's use our voice. Do not believe that people won't listen. If there's the most famous period of American environmentalism happened in the early 1970s. This is a picture of the first Earth Day in April 1970. And millions joined Earth Day observances. People thought, so what's the big deal about it? Well, we had a Republican president called Richard Nixon. He didn't care about the environment, but he realized what people wanted, and the politicians realized, wait a minute, I mean, we can't oppose this. So, created the Clean Air Act, created the EPA, created the Endangered Species Act, all within a 3-year period. Absolutely amazing. And this was somebody who was a politician who didn't care about this subject. He cared about other things, but he goes down in history as one of the 2 greatest environmental presidents, the other being Teddy Roosevelt, another Republican. So don't think this is a left-right thing. This is about common sense. So use your voice. The youth movement is growing around the world, and I'm sure some of you are part of it. This is in East Asia. These are Indonesians and Malaysians. And now if you go to the annual COPs, the big annual meetings on climate change, these are young people, and indigenous young people as well, actually sitting on the stage. So it's very exciting. But you don't need to just do that big stuff, although that is good to do. And one of the things that I hope and pray is there will be a growing youth movement demanding action. But in addition to that, there's lots of smaller things that actually can make progress on. I mean, look at the menu on the school lunch. And is it the right balance between plant-based? Look at issues like, I don't know if you have school buses here, but are they electric? They should be. We could move to electric buses. The reason they're not electric is they cost more at the moment. But the point being, they cost more to buy, but if you look at the cost of running them, it's much, much cheaper. And it turns out actually now to be cheaper. But of course, school districts can't afford to buy them because they have this big upfront cost. That's the sort of thing worth lobbying over. Do you know what I mean? Food loss and waste would be another one, for example. So that's the first one. What's second to do? Don't look for straight lines or smooth curves. Many changes will be incremental, which is good, but the really exciting changes that are needed won't be incremental. History is not just about straight lines and smooth curves. It's about kinks. And the exciting thing is technology comes in very quickly. I don't know if you can see this. This goes back to 1900 and shows how new technologies took off. So this is the electric power, for example, came along in 1910, and by 1950, everyone had it. This is the refrigerator came along. No one had a refrigerator until 1925, and then suddenly Everybody had it. And so you can look at this. This is the automobile. This is color TV. And then this is the internet, for example. So this is how innovation happens. So sometimes people say, oh, we're never going to be able to solve the problem. We'll never take electric vehicles. Actually, though, once the electric vehicles become cheaper and better, and we've got charging stations, yeah, people will adopt them very quickly. And it's very exciting. This is a famous picture. You may have seen it before. This is Fifth Avenue, New York, in the year 1900. And you see all these are all horse-drawn carriages. There are no automobiles there. That's 1900. 13 years later, same picture, same street. Can you see any horses? They're all cars. There is actually one horse-drawn carriage that's sort of, if you look hard, you'll see it. 13 years. And do you know in 1900 what they were grumbling about in New York City? They would never be able to solve all the problem of horse manure on the streets because the need for horses was growing. Turned out it wasn't growing at all. So third, what to do. Try to understand people and act on it. Those of us that care about the environment have not done a good job thinking about people. And that's why a lot of people, certainly in the United States, don't want to do anything about climate change, because they've sort of been ignored, and they feel they've been left behind, and they feel they're going to be losing as some jobs in certain industries will decline. We haven't paid attention. And the one group we should pay more attention to than anybody else are those people that know how to manage the environment, especially indigenous people. Yesterday, for me, was an amazing treat to be here for the Truth and Reconciliation Day. I think what Canada's doing, obviously, is a terrible past you have, but at the same time, what you're trying to do now is really inspiring. I spent a week last year at the Great Bear Sea watching indigenous people, First Nations, how they're managing nature, and it's really exciting. I'll show you just one example of why we should listen. This also shows what wonderful things we can do with satellite technology. The red bits here, this is a state of Rondônia in Brazil, the Amazon. The red bits are deforestation. This goes back to 2005. And this is years going by. So each year we're measuring different ones. And you see that, and you see how bad deforestation is getting. But you see there are some parts that are not deforested. And you know why? Because those are the parts that indigenous people own. And they choose not to deforest them. They could if they want. They could deforest and make some quick money if they wanted to. They choose not to because they have a longer term perspective. They have sort of 7 generations, if you like, of perspective. And we need to learn from other people, not just people like us. Probably most people in this room care about these issues of climate change a lot. Maybe some of you don't, but I bet most of you do. You're well educated. But let's all try and get inside the heads of those that might be different in 2 ways. 1, they might oppose what we're doing. 2, they might be just much better at managing nature and climate than we can. So that's what that looks like. And finally, don't let them tell you it can't be done. You will hear, as I hear all the time, people say, nah, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. We tried that before. It won't work. I always say, if I hear that, those people should retire. Try it. You know, Henry Ford said, I'm one behind on the slides, I think. Don't let them tell you it can't be done. Henry Ford said, I'm going to build an automobile for everybody. They said, it can't be done. Everyone have an automobile? You must be crazy. He did it. Here's somebody. Do you know who this is? This is one of the great breakthroughs in sport in the history of the world. 1968, the Mexico Olympics. There was one man who was derided. They laughed about him. His name was Dick Fosbury, because everybody jumped in a certain way except him. And he jumped backwards. And everyone thought it was the most funny thing imaginable. He was like a bit of a joke. Well, he won the gold medal. He was the only person that jumped like that in the 1968 Olympics. In the 1972 Olympics, guess how many people jumped like this? Everybody. Never again, after that one person jump, never again has anybody in any competition, any Olympic type competition, jumped in their way. It's called the Fosbury flop. You know, weird things happen, and they always take longer to happen than you think, and then they happen quicker than you ever imagined. And so system change is what we want. Don't be shy about when people say, I can't change everything. Well, actually, why not? Let me end with a story, a personal story, a true story, but it's sort of an allegory. I don't know if you've ever heard of the wildebeest migration in Africa. Like 2 million wildebeest. They're wild animals, and they migrate across the Serengeti, which is in Tanzania and Kenya. It's absolutely amazing to watch them. And I took my family a couple of 3 years ago to that. And we were watching them. At one stage, they cross the what's called the Mara River in the Masai Mara. And we saw this. It's absolutely amazing. This is how they cross the river. Go down these steep slopes, and you could see, I don't know if you can see over here, see that one's upside down. They've got their babies. There's a baby that falls down. In the river, crocodiles. So it's the very happy crocodiles, because there are tens of thousands of these animals. My daughter, who is about your age, she said to me, you know, Dad, why do they come down those steep slopes and threaten their lives, when just a mile downstream we saw them doing this? It was a perfectly healthy river and there were no crocodiles. Why do they not all go the easy way? So I asked a bunch of biologists and I said, you know, why do they do it? And they said, we don't know, but we think it's in their DNA. We think they do that and risk their lives and risk their children because they've always done it. And they just think that's the way to go. So we do it. And it got me to thinking, is this the way we're running our economy and our society? Are we behaving in the way because we've always done it? Do we build cities around automobiles? Do we do this when we know we could have this? And I think the answer is probably yes. And so each generation has to decide what do they want in terms of the big questions. So look, we have to, this is what we used to be in terms of our footprint. This is where we are now, and this is where we need to be. Doesn't mean we'll be poorer. We'll actually be richer. We'll have better lives. We can do this if we make decisions together and individually. And how should you feel? You know, go back to those 4 pictures I showed you. This is sort of how I feel, which is 2 things. Somewhat out of control because there's so much to do and so complicated, but exhilarated because this is incredible. And it's actually very, very beautiful what we're trying to do. So I would really encourage you, as you think about your careers, to think hard about what do you want to do? What's your calling? How are you going to be part of this wonderful adventure together? Thank you very much. Why stay up? Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thank you. We have in Anishinaabe thank you. We say thank you by saying miigwech, and we say big thank you by saying chi miigwech. So chi miigwech for this. I've had the pleasure of hearing Sir Andrew speak a few times this week, and I grow increasingly more inspired and motivated every time. I think and we've heard a lot about climate anxiety, particularly in youth, and feeling that overwhelming sense and of, you know, how do we tackle this? What is our future? But I hope as you were listening to Sir Andrew that you do see that there is much hope, much optimism, and a brighter future, especially within your very capable and brilliant and creative minds and hands. So now, so thank you again for such an engaging lecture. Yeah, like another. So now to lead our question and answer period with Sir Andrew, I'm excited to welcome Aaron Stewart. Aaron is a proud graduate of the Faculty of Environment, one of our Young Alumni Award winners, and currently the managing director of the Future Cities Institute, founded by Kai Van, which is based here at Waterloo and within the Faculty of Environment, where she's helping shape the cities of tomorrow. focusing on housing, mobility, and sustainable infrastructure. She's also a national leader in Indigenous clean energy, co-founder of a groundbreaking nonprofit, and a proud member of the Heiltsuk Climate Action Team in Bella Bella, British Columbia. From the Arctic to urban centers, Erin's work is driving real change, and today she's here to help us dive deeper into the conversation. Erin will now guide us through a Q&A with Sir Andrew, asking a few questions before turning it over to you folks, our audience. This is your chance to engage directly, so listen closely, reflect deeply, and think about what this means for your own role in building the future. Please join me in welcoming Erin to the stage.
Good morning. My mic on? There we go. Can everyone hear me? All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, students. I know some of you came from very far. Thank you, teachers, for bringing your students here. I want to thank TD as well for putting on this wonderful event. But most importantly, I would like to thank the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Mississaugas of the Credit, whose land we are on today. What a lot of people might not realize is that Six Nations actually has the most clean energy projects, more than municipalities, in this country. They are also leading on energy storage projects, some of the largest in North America. And aren't we lucky to learn from that experience? So I wanted to just start off by sharing a little story. Right now, we have a project at the Future Cities Institute, and we were working with all 25 communities in Nunavut. And what we're doing is we're looking at their sustainability plans, their climate plans, their land use plans, and we're trying to put those all in one to make sure that they're cohesive. But we're also allowing to build capacity in the community as opposed to that going out to consultants. So then the money's staying in the community. So we're developing an AI-based tool. And I had a staff member come up to me and he said, Erin, I have my son and he has been doing hackathons. He's a fantastic programmer. And do you have any projects he can work on? And I thought this is a great project that he could work on. And now he's developing that tool. He's 16 years old. He's 16. And so I'm actually taking him up to Nunavut, him and his father, as well as our research team, in February. And he's getting this outstanding experience. And I kind of think back to when I was a little bit older than you, but about 18. And I was really passionate about music. And so that summer, I actually went on tour with some of my favorite musicians. And I got to work on their sustainability team. So looking at, you know how people have riders as musicians and it might say like, oh, I want green M&Ms. Well, what we did was we started working with music artists to say, no, we don't want single-use plastic. We want local food. We want LED lighting. Make this area sustainable. And I think when I think about all of you, you all are maybe interested and have very different passions, but bring that to sustainability. You all have a place here. And I know when I was asked to moderate this, I thought, wow, Sir Andrew Steer, oh my gosh. And I was so excited, but I was incredibly, incredibly nervous. Still am a little bit. But I've had the pleasure of being around Andrew for the last 2.5 days, and he is the most kind and genuine individual, and he thinks very thoughtfully and intentionally about every question asked. And so don't be nervous, okay? Don't be nervous. This is an opportunity for you that may shape your career. And yeah, he's just so wonderful and kind, and I really appreciate that. And so what we're gonna ask is to stay in your seats. Somebody will bring you a mic, and I think I manifested this moment because when I learned that we were going to be having these geese and these shirts to hand out, I had this moment of like, I'm going to get to throw geese and t-shirts into the audience with Sir Andrew Steer, and this is gonna be wicked. So I have a couple questions, but then we're gonna turn it over to you. So I have 2 questions.
Right? You don't seem nervous at all.
Oh, I am.
You shouldn't be either.
Yeah. So my first question is about your personal journey. When you were in high school and you're thinking about your career and your next steps, how did you get into sustainability? What inspired you?
Wow. That's a good question. Well, in England, as you probably know, when you're in what's called the sixth form, and that's when you're 16 and 17, you have to pick just 3 subjects. And mine were economics, geography, and English literature. And actually, I realized that the economics I was learning was totally separate from the geography. It was like the economics assumed that it was all about factories and bridges and physical investment, whilst in fact, we live in a world that is a physical world. And I started realizing, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this. We need to bring these 2 together. And then I started reading some of the English sort of romantic poetry and so on about the beauty of nature. And I realized, wait a minute, there's something, we need a much more, we're in our silos here. There's economics, has nothing to do with nature. Then there's geography, which has a lot to do with, you know, a lot of things. And then there's, and so I sort of started thinking. And then I went to university and studied the same thing, mainly economics. Then I moved to Indonesia. And as I was looking at the economy in Indonesia, I realized that actually it was growing fast, mainly because they were running down their capital. They were cutting down their forests, and they were digging oil and gas out of the ground. And I thought, we need to have some way of integrating these 2 things. And so that led to my change.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love the interdisciplinary nature of the word. My next question is about your legacy. So, about your children. How do you inspire your children in sustainability, and what do you teach them, and what do they teach you?
I have 2 children. One is my daughter, Charlotte. She is 24 years old, and she is an environmental person. She studied environment. She's now working on issues of landscape restoration in Africa and in Saudi Arabia. My son is an indie pop artist. He's got a deal with a record label. He's only 22. His name's Benjamin Steer. If you could listen to him. But here's what I'd love you to do. Could you DM him and tell him to stop writing just about love and lost love and, you know, how she let me down and this kind of thing. But couldn't he write about something inspiring, like the beauty of nature? So please do it. Benjamin Steer, do listen.
Don't say his father sent him. It's not like that either, okay?
You better not say that. So I guess what we did is, I mean, number one, lifestyle. Like you, I mean, we're pretty affluent, aren't we, in our societies? So one can easily spend a lot of money. What we try to do is be not austere, but be sensible and think about the use of plastic. Think about waste. Think about buying stuff you don't need and just don't do it. And think about, you know, we can all afford to give a lot away to good causes, like the wonderful NGO that Erin created, by the way. It's a wonderful NGO, Indigenous Energy. So we can all do more. But then expose our kids to real issues. I suspect most of you here travel around parts of Ontario. Be alert. We took our kids to, well, like for example, the Serengeti. We're privileged to be able to do that. I took them to various environmental conferences, which they hated, but you know, it's still good to
They're
do.
fun.
You never know. So yeah, I think we do need to think about our own lifestyles.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I know when Amanda opened for us, she had mentioned when you have your questions, we're gonna kind of please raise your hand really high, and then when you introduce yourself, say your name and what school you're from, and maybe what city you're from. I know there's a couple people from a few different cities, so we're gonna take some questions from the audience. Okay, all right. The mic.
Yeah.
Can we just get the mic up here? Thank you.
Do you need a duck?
Oh yeah, I have.
Is this
You
working?
want to take the first throw?
No, you go.
This is a nice toss.
Awesome. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Edward. I'm from WCI, which is just across the street, actually, in Waterloo. I thought this presentation was amazing. You seem like someone who's very educated in the present terms of like how you're involved with this sort of global change, this very important problem. I'm very curious about another present topic we have right now. That's artificial intelligence. I know you mentioned that during your talk about how the young people can get involved with this sort of environmental change. I hear a lot of mixed information about artificial intelligence. You know, I hear about the immense energy and water consumption that it uses, but I also hear about the incredible things it can produce. And I'm wondering what you think overall about artificial intelligence and how it can be applied to environmental sustainability.
Yes. Well, very good question. Look, you read a lot about the bad things about AI. It could take us over and do us out of jobs and all kinds of things. And you also hear, as you say, about incredible, you know, use of electricity, water, and so on. And we've got to think about those issues. And what it can do in nature and climate is amazing. I mean, amazing. I've been running the Bezos Earth Fund for the last 4 years. It's a big fund, $10 billion of grants. And we put $100 million into a grand challenge for how to use AI. And it's incredible, actually. I mean, for example, you know, there are at least 9 million species in the world. We've only actually identified less than 2 million, because it's very difficult to identify them. AI can massively expand the pace at which we identify new species. Why? Because, for example, it can use sight, it can use sound, it can use DNA very quickly to place any sample that you get into sort of the hierarchy of plants or animals or whatever. And it can do many other things. I mean, for example, those things that I showed you of satellite technology, AI can now dramatically improve our understanding. For about 5 years now, we've been able to see from satellite space nearly every tree in the world that falls, almost. I mean, it's incredible. Now we can actually see trees that regrow, bushes that regrow, change in landscape. And you continually improve the model, AI does. So there's just so many. I use the example here also of alternative proteins. There are 300 million proteins out there. Humans can't sort them through to come up with alternative proteins. AI can. So we put money into that as well. So I think I would really urge all of you, not everybody needs to be able to design AI, but everyone will need to be able to use it. And I'll bet you're doing that already. So thank you.
Let's take the one over here. Right? Yep, perfect.
Yeah, you want to have to throw it a long
I
way.
know that
yeah.
I do.
The front row's too easy for you.
Yeah. Let's see.
Hello. I really appreciated your lecture. It was very informative. Earlier you mentioned China as being a global leader in sustainability. I was wondering if there are any other nations you envision playing a big role in sustainability, maybe very high populations, and if so, how's their progress been thus far?
Yeah, look, I think over the last 20 years there have been a number of countries which have really advanced things, including Canada. And by the way, Canada deserves quite a bit of credit for working with China. Canada and China have sometimes had political disagreements, but way back at the time of the Rio Earth Summit, Canada and China did a deal together to establish something called the China Council on Environment and Development. It brings like 30 leading international experts together with 30 leading Chinese experts, and I've been on it for the last 10 years. We meet every year, and then we meet in person every year in Beijing or somewhere. Then we go and meet the vice premier, and we talk about it. Canada is still co-chairing that, and Canada has actually been really engaged in a lot of things. Canada, by the way, has been the leader in many ways on First Nations. And so one of the things that it's great to see experts from Canada together with experts from Brazil and Peru and places like that, and even Africa, where they're really working on that. Other countries, I mean, look, Denmark has been a total leader on wind energy. The United Kingdom has now offshore wind is a real leader. Germany deserves a lot of credit for, in the early days of renewable energy, Germany subsidized something called feed-in tariffs, and so drove down the price. And now what China has done is driven it down even more. I mean, it's one of the great sort of events in human history, in a way, the pace at which technology has advanced. You know, in 1978, President Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the roof of the White House. Those panels today cost 99.7% less than when he put them on. So it's amazing, really.
Wonderful. I would also say I have a dear friend in Denmark, and his name is Soren Hermansen, and there's Samsø Energy, Samsø Island, and they do Samsø Energy, and it's actually a net positive island, so you should look into that as well.
Well done.
Okay.
Good throw.
Thank
Good
you.
throw.
Thank
Wow.
you. Okay, let's take some from this side. There's a girl with a bun right there. Yeah, you. Yeah, perfect. I'm having fun.
Hello, my name is Adriana Mazza. I'm from GRCI. Wonderful presentation. I was just wondering, in terms of agriculture and farming, if organic farming or farming without pesticides and insecticides, if that's a step forward towards a more sustainable planet?
Yeah, great question. Yes, yes. And again, it's another area where countries like Canada are actually innovating. Sort of organic or what is now often referred to as regenerative agriculture. And what does that mean? It means that you don't take things out of the soil that you wouldn't put back in. So in other words, you leave the soil as healthy as before, and as you were saying with organic, you make sure that you don't have lots of spill-offs of, and it's still a very serious problem of pesticides and herbicides and eutrophication of rivers. So the problem is definitely not solved, and but we are making some progress.
Wonderful. All right.
Oh, I think we have a winner
Okay.
here now.
So there is a girl in the back corner, very back corner. Yes, you. Yeah.
I know you want to be ambitious.
I
in
really
where you
just want
throw
to try to
things.
throw it. It's fine.
Hi, my name is Malaka Sella. I'm from St. Mary's Catholic Academy. And I just wanted to say I loved your lecture, and I loved how you used the analogy of buffalo migration in Tanzania, because I do originate from Tanzania, and I do think that a lot of people in our world do have a hard time changing their mindset, even if they are taking the harder option. My question would be, for students who want to go into the environmental sector, what can we do to put our voices out there and to lead the way to that career?
Well done. Thank you for saying that, and congratulations from where you came from. There's such a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. What to do? If you want to go into this field, if you want to make a difference, you can. No question about it. I would look around you now and say, are there examples of things I could do? Maybe with my friends. Maybe it's starts small. Maybe it's some of those things we talked about. Maybe it's a food loss and waste. Maybe it's something to do with single-use plastics. Maybe it's organizing a discussion group around these issues. Maybe it's mobilizing when they have marches in wherever, Toronto or wherever. Be part of that. Join environmental NGOs and learn about it. And then apply to some of the great universities like Waterloo. It's always so funny because I've spent some time with those of you in the environment department, including the dean, and he always says, well, we're very small. I say, well, you mean very small? We've got 4,000 students here. Because Waterloo's so big. But Waterloo, for example, is an amazing environmental school, and there are others as well. So by all means, apply to that. But don't feel you have to study environment. I mean, there's lots of things that we need. We need people in AI that are going to solve the problem. We need GIS people. We need economists. We need lawyers. So by no means do you have to get into a box called environment. You can, follow any discipline you want and bring that toolkit to the issues. And never think, I used to think, well, I could never really engage in this. I mean, I'll be for someone else. I mean, I'll have a regular job, and nothing wrong with regular jobs, by the way. Regular jobs can make a difference. But actually, things suddenly open up. I mean, look at you. You were here, Erin, at Waterloo.
Yeah.
You then said, wait a minute, I had one of my secondments from Waterloo in the federal government.
Yeah.
I was working on issues of indigenous people. There's a gap here relating to indigenous people and energy. I'm going to start an NGO. And Erin's NGO now is 13
38.
$38 million a year.
Oh, $12 million, 38 staff.
Oh,
Yeah, 12 million operating.
12 million, I was going to say.
But thank
that
you.
You're doing better than I thought.
Yeah.
So, you know, in other words, you can start something and suddenly, wow, this is making a difference. Don't be shy about that. But you don't need to start an NGO. You can join an institution. You can join. My daughter, when she graduated from environment, she looked around, and I urged her, although that's not why she did it. She went into a private company, went into Mars, the Mars, you know, candy company, where she worked on their scope 3, which is their emissions through their chain. And she learned so much from the private sector. Then she worked for an NGO, now she worked for the private sector again. And so, but all with the same idea. So you can jet around.
If I could say, just in terms of the University of Waterloo, so we have the largest co-op program in the entire world. And I know when I came into school here, I wanted to be an environmental lawyer, but I got to do 5 different co-op jobs. And so I worked for the federal government. I wanted to try oil and gas and understand it. I worked in electricity markets. Then I worked for an NGO. Try what you like try it out. So it's a really great opportunity. And as Sir Andrew said, just figuring out what it is that you want to do and apply that to your own discipline. There's many ways that you can incorporate sustainability. So let's give this a go.
Give it.
This is not going to go well, but we're going to
Yeah.
do it anyway. Okay. Oh, no.
Wow, not
Okay,
bad.
well, it's,
Not bad.
we're just going to, all right, perfect. Okay, so we have a question just from online, and then I'm going to take some more from the audience. So we have Megan from St. Paul's in Ottawa. What is the best way to pursue a career in conservation and sustainability? Which university degrees and programs would be best?
Well, some of that we addressed already. Look, going to a really good environment school is a great idea, so do it. When you do it, try and study something that is a little more technical. Could be GIS, could be, you know, statistics, could be whatever. But you don't need to go to environment school. I never went to environment school. I mean, I was an economist, plain vanilla economist. I taught economics. I'm sort of embarrassed how I used to teach it. This is when I graduated with my PhD at Cambridge University in England. But then, what I was able to do is bring my economics. When I realized how important this is, I brought that toolkit to bear. And so I was working at the World Bank at the time, and they realized they had to do something on environment. So they brought in some world-class environmental people to lead it. Didn't work because they couldn't speak the language of the World Bank, which was finance and economics.
Yeah.
So then they said to me, you know, you might not know much about the environment, but you know a lot about how to talk to people. So I then took over the environment department, and we were able to change it. So in other words, don't feel you have to go to environment, but that is a wonderful thing to do, especially if you come here to Waterloo. But as I said before, we need all kinds of people in this space. So good luck, Megan. And also, you mentioned conservation. We need people in nature. There's a lot to be done there. And Canada is a textbook case of good things happening and things that haven't gone so well as well. So it's a great place to practice.
Wonderful. I saw the gentleman in the white shirt right there. Yep. With the glasses. Oh, okay. We'll take the one at the back, and then we'll take you, the one that's standing. But okay, all right. Okay.
Your presentation was really good, and in your opinion, what is the best and most reliable source of energy?
Oh, great question. Renewable, but it doesn't need to be one kind of renewable. I mean, we shouldn't be picking winners. Wind energy is exceedingly inexpensive in some places, and solar is incredibly inexpensive in some places. In the old days, it used to cost a lot more to generate electricity through wind and solar. In 80% of the land surface now, it is considerably cheaper to use wind and solar. But also, there are other very good renewable sources if you do it right. Hydro is good. And of course, increasingly, there's a lot of discussion about bringing back nuclear,
Yes.
especially the small modular reactors. And so the jury is out on that, but I think it's likely. And then, of course, there's the hydrogen economy, which is doing less well than we anticipated. The cost of green hydrogen basically takes water and sun and separates the oxygen from the hydrogen in the water, and then you can use that to create hydrogen, and then you can use that to create ammonia. So there's a whole lot of things out there. Some are going quicker than others.
And I guess the other piece would be that it's very regional or geographically based. So the best thing you can actually do is start with a community energy plan or an regional energy plan, of course, to figure out what works best in your area as well.
That's a very good point.
Okay, so the gentleman that stood up originally, there in the white. Okay.
The far one.
Good
throw.
I'm getting worse at this.
Good throw.
All right. All right. There's a mic. Perfect. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Malik. I'm from Resurrection Secondary Catholic School over in Kitchener. I know that a lot of time when these big changes come, there's a lot of kind of instability in the economy, and especially where we are right now, where housing is in a very unstable spot, the economy with job markets, and what, you know, students my age are actually living maybe paycheck to paycheck. What can we reasonably do to both make good action on climate change while keeping ourselves, you know, stable and prepared for a good future?
That's a very good question, because we need to be really careful not to give the impression this is too easy. It's messy, and we shouldn't assume that everybody will benefit immediately in the same way. But that gets to the point I was trying to make about, if we really, really want to have success, we have to start by listening. To your point about, if you go in and you say, I've got the best energy source for you as a community, probably won't be much ownership of that. You need to go in and listen. And so too, if you know, if we're going to be closing down in time our coal-powered plants, people are going to lose their jobs. The environmental movement hasn't done a very good job on that. I tell you, someone now that is doing a good job, because they failed so badly, is South Africa. I was out there about 6 months ago. South Africa had this big plan to close down its coal-powered electricity generating plants. And it was so enthusiastic, it closed this huge plant without thinking through what was going to happen to the workers. So the entire national union of mine workers and so on were up in arms, opposed everything, especially the workers that were out of a job. And so the South African government, very smartly, their climate change commission said, sorry, we made a huge mistake. We're going to put things on hold. We're going to put serious resources into retraining. We actually financed this retraining. I went out to see these people who 2 years earlier had been fundamentally opposed. They were now learning new tools that they were going to bring to renewable energy and to other things as well. And listening to them was fantastic. They said, you know, we actually now have a view as what the future could look like, and we're proud of where our nation is going, kind of thing. And that takes work, it takes money, but it's incredibly well worth it. And the sums of money and the amount of work is tiny compared to the benefits you can get from doing it. So you're absolutely right to have the tone of your question. You know, how do we navigate? And for politicians, it's not easy. I mean, even for your prime minister, there's no person alive that's done more to try and green financial markets. I worked closely with him after he was governor of the Bank of England in the COP in Glasgow, where it was remarkable what he and others did. But once you're prime minister, you've got to navigate, and that's what good politics is. And if you simply go in and say this is where it will be, it's going to be more tricky.
That's also one of the things that we work on the Future Cities Institute, is looking at what are the trade-offs that we have when we're building housing, for example. How do we improve the environmental regulation so that it's quick, but also that we're considering the environment? So it's a great question. If you're wanting to get involved, there's an amazing housing project that's going on, and it's called Build Now. Okay, you were right there. Malik, right? Yeah, okay. Oopsies, oh my gosh. All right. All right.
I think you're losing your edge.
I am losing my edge, yes. It started off strong. Okay, let's take a quad closer to the front. Inspire. Yeah, you have an Inspire jacket on. Yeah. Oh, we're just going to get you a mic there. Yeah. just so everyone can hear you.
My name is Bronwyn Bradshaw. I'm from Stratford District Secondary School. I was just wondering, what do you think the world will look like in the future if we continue like as we are? And what do you think it will look like in the future if we make like improvements? And which like scenario do you think would be most likely?
Wow. Wow, that's an amazing question.
Yeah.
Well, if we keep going, the world will do fine, but we won't. No worry about the world. The world will recover, maybe after we've gone. So it really is a very dangerous time. I mean, we shouldn't kid ourselves. And the reason for that, there are these sort of negative tipping points, you know. So, for example, you've heard about the permafrost melting, where it will release a lot of methane. That would suddenly make things much, much worse. So too in the Amazon, you have something called dieback. Once you get down to about 25% loss of Amazon, the weather will change. The most dangerous one, actually, for some of us in Europe is the North Atlantic oscillation. It's quite possible that the Gulf Stream, I mean, not in my lifetime, but in the next 200 years, if we keep going, the Gulf Stream would disappear and we'd become a frozen north. So there are sort of many of these really negative ones, and so we should not play around with them. And so it's not a matter of opinion. I mean, we have obviously politicians, and not in this country, we have politicians that, well, maybe in this country, I don't know, that say forget climate change. We cannot forget climate change. So the outcome is very bad, very bad. Poverty will rise, life expectancy will fall, our health will deteriorate, our jobs will be worse, etc. Now, the good news is, exactly the point of your second question, is, you know, we don't need to any longer, I use the example of cities simply because it's so dramatic. I mean, why would the average American want to spend 6 days in a car stuck in traffic? It's totally not necessary. There's a better way. I mean, there's a better way for almost all the things we don't really enjoy. Our children could be healthier, they would live longer. Your grandchildren could be living to well over 100 years, and we'll have more green space, we'll have more time. It'll be much fairer as well. The current system is very unfair. And one of the things I should have mentioned is that, you know, inequality is become just obscene, hasn't it?
Yeah. Something that's going on in Canada, so I spend a lot of time in Canada's Arctic, and there's communities that are dependent on ice roads to get in and out of the community, all their food coming in, and sometimes the seasons are actually getting shorter. The ice roads are not lasting as long, so people have to have other modes of transportation. But something that's a positive here is we have traditional hunters that are going out and through Safe Ice. There's a program called Safe Ice, and they're monitoring it to make sure it's safe enough for people to go on, making sure it's safe enough for trucks to go on. So, you know, I think with every potential thing that's happening on climate change, there's people that are coming up, just like you, I hope, with solutions. All right, do you want to give this one a go?
Which one?
Just to
oh, you think I can reach the front row?
Yeah.
Even I can?
Yes. Well,
I wanted you to ask me the one at the back.
I'm doing so poorly. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful.
Complete.
Okay, he has 2 hands up there, so let's take his question. Yeah.
I'm Bryden from SDSS. How old were you when you knew you wanted to do this?
Oh, wow, good question. Much older than you. I mean, well, I knew that I wanted to figure out how to do it when I was in high school. But before I really had that aha moment about changing my life, it was probably 10 years later, yes. And again, you know, the point I made about get a discipline, an academic discipline that you're good at. Could be accounting, could be finance, could be health, could be education, and then apply that sort of thing. For me, that was being an economist and thinking through how this applies to the economy. It's a great question, though. Good, thank you.
Oops.
Yeah, I think
All right, we have time for one more, and this one's pointing at her, and she's waving her hand, so we're going with her. But I don't have any more prizes, but maybe we can get one from somebody. Yeah, go ahead, just right there with the mic. Thank you.
Yes, finally.
Just down there. Perfect.
Hi, sorry. I'm Quinn and I'm from Elmira High School. And my question has to do sort of with what my friend over here said about the youth. My question is, how can people in positions of power, especially the older generations, and experts in industries mentioned, help radicalize and empower youth to take action, particularly in today's polarized social, political, and economic climate marked by food scarcity and housing climates where financial pressures make it difficult for young people to pursue many of the jobs linked to the environment?
Wow. You are going to be a very successful advocate for this field and an activist. But look, not everybody of my generation is going to be in the right place on this. And I would urge you to, when you're considering being employed by somebody, to dig a little deeper. And when you're being interviewed, ask them what their view is on listening to young people's voices and listening to issues of sustainability. Now, as you say, I mean, you can't be too choosy in today's job market, you know, but the more you have the opportunity of going with leaders who have a heart in the right place, the more effective you'll be. Do not, if you can avoid it, don't get into a situation where you are not listened to. Now, at the same time, I mean, let's be clear, when you're young, you've got a lot to learn. So you can't go in thinking you know everything. You need to learn from those that have been around. But there needs to be a give and take. And if your boss is not interested in the ideas that you bring, then look for a new boss. Because a good boss can be transformative. And of course, in my humble experience, the organizations that I've run have been successful because they're not top down. It's not just me saying we're going to do this. It's like, wow, we've recruited this unbelievable group of people. In this staff, there are ideas that we need to treasure and invest in and support and lift up. And so it makes you more effective. And if you look at any successful organization that is that's doing things in our field, they will be listening to the youth. So I would encourage all of you to not be shy at all. And your generation is not shy. We were much more shy. And I wish, when I look back, I wish I'd been a little more sort of in your face. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. So Sir Andrew, thank you so much for your inspiration, for sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. All the students, thank you for your curiosity. I mean, we could have taken questions all day long with the amount of hands. And thank you for coming out. And teachers, thank you for bringing your classrooms to here, to the University of Waterloo. And thank you to TD for the contributions today. So just a round of applause for everybody in this room.
Thank you. You guys are great. You really are. The future is in your hands, and thank you, Erin, too.
Of course.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Hello. Alrighty. Thank you, everyone, for being such a wonderful and engaged audience, both here in person and virtually online. It's great to see that engagement, and I'm glad to see that Sir Andrew's lecture garnered a lot of curiosity and questions, and excellent questions at that. I want to take some time to thank both of you again for your time and for imparting your insights and wisdom to the next generation. I also want to thank Waterloo Advancement, the folks behind organizing events like this and other events that happened this week as part of the T.D. Walter Bean Lecture Series. It's no small feat. There's a lot of moving parts, and so I think they just did such a wonderful job bringing us all together around this very important topic and timely topic on climate action and climate change. Before we wrap up, I have just a few instructions to help you make the most of the rest of your visit here at the University of Waterloo for those of you who are in person. All 6 of our faculty booths will soon be open and ready for you to explore. This is a great chance to ask questions, meet students and staff, and learn about the programs and opportunities here at Waterloo. While you're visiting the booths or enjoying your lunch, we'll also be streaming a short film called The Corridor by Age of Union, one of our partners here in the Faculty of Environment. The film will be playing in the background with subtitles on, so you can enjoy it quietly while you eat or continue to chat amongst yourselves. Lunch will be served school by school, so please wait until your school is called. A member of our team will let you know when it is your turn to head over. In the meantime, feel free to explore, ask questions, and enjoy your time here. We're so glad you could join us here today. Thank you again. Miigwech.
They'll bring you back to me. All these roads could bring you back.
Oh, sorry, I just got a last-minute request. Could all teachers please come to the front of the room here on the stage for a group photo? Thank you again.
Okay, could we have everybody please stay seated? You will get a chance to explore the booths during lunch, and we'll do that school by school. Okay.